Welcome to the Mindset RX podcast, a show for functional athletes to gain a champ's mindset. Now, I just finished up this interview with Mark Ormrod. Mark is a former Royal Marine who, as you'll hear, underwent some pretty catastrophic, not even take out the pretty, some catastrophic injuries, losing 3 limbs, his 2 legs, I believe 2 legs above the knee, and 1 arm as well. And I got him on the show because he provides a fantastic story of resilience, fortitude, but also breaks it down into a way that's easily implementable into your own lives. Even if, well, I'm guessing not many of you have very similar injuries to Mark, but his perspective really is something to be incredibly held tight to you. And I really enjoyed the show. I really hope you will do too. And a few things that we talked about. Firstly, Mark stuff. Check out Mark. He's one of the few people that I follow on Instagram and haven't blocked from my newsfeed because the crap they put out. Mark's interesting. He put out great perspective stuff the whole time. So check out Mark. We also talk about Real Jiu-Jitsu, a business. Well, I was going to say business, an organisation designed to help former and serving servicemen and women just to kind of rehab themselves, get in a good place mentally and physically through the medium of jiu-jitsu, and it's branched out into the world of functional fitness and also boxing too. So you can check that out. And I personally wear the Real rash guards because A, it supports a brilliant cause, and B, they're actually really good quality too. So you can find out more about that. Just get on Instagram, search for Real Jiu-Jitsu, Romeo Echo Oscar Romeo Golf. There you go, I got it right. So yeah, check out that and enjoy the show with Mark. He's a fascinating human being, some really good perspective, and a lovely bloke too. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cool. So I think we'll. You must get sick and tired of doing the story, but let's start off with how you got into the Marines to begin with, and then your career through there. Was it an idea that you're going to go into the Royal Marines from the word go, or was there other options there?
Do you know what it was? Right, I got to about 15 and a half, and my GCSEs were on the horizon, and from out of nowhere, I just had this thought that when the exams are done, I either need to go into further education and so make some decisions about that, or leave school, join the big bad world and get a job. You know, it just kind of hit me one day out of the blue. So I sat down and thought about it. And although, I did all right in my GCSEs, I got 9 A to C's, I got 1 D, so could have very well gone on to do further education, but it just wasn't something that I was that passionate about. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to get out there into the big bad world, and I knew that I wanted a career as opposed to a job. I wanted something that I could start at the bottom at, work my way up, and then in however many years' time, have reached the top of my profession and feel proud that I've done that, and have the opportunity along the way as an individual to grow and become a better person. So I sat down and thought about it, and I narrowed it down to the military, the police, or the fire brigade. I can't remember my exact reasoning why the police and the fire brigade were out of the running early on, but I decided on a career in the military. Now, I live in Plymouth, which is quite a large military city. We've got Marines, Navy, and Army here. The only thing we don't have really is RAF. And bizarrely, I didn't really know anything about the Royal Marines. As a 15 and a half year old, my vision when anyone ever said, soldier or camouflage uniform was the Army. I think that might be the case for a lot of young men. So I had some friends, all the guys that I grew up around at home went to the same school as me, but they were all 2 or 3 years older. So those guys had already left, and a couple of them had already joined the Army. So one of them took me down to the career centre one weekend, and I had a chat with the sergeant major there. I said I didn't know what I want to do. I just want to join the military and figure it out from there. So I got all the paperwork, went back home, had to get my parents to sign it because of my age. And then my dad told me that I had an uncle who was a captain in the Royal Marines, which I didn't know. So we arranged a visit up to him. He only lived about 20 miles up the road. We got in the car, went up to see him, and he told me about his career in the Marines. So that next week, I went back to the career centre. I spoke to, this time, the Royal Marines guy in charge of recruiting. He sat me down, had a chat, showed me the video, and I was sold. You know, I did this. It was just completely different. You know, I saw this group of men who were very, very highly trained, who could operate in the desert, in the jungle, in the Arctic, in the woodland. They could go by plane, by boat, by foot. You know, they were just like complete all-rounders, and it just sold it to me from there on. So I went back and I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to join the Royal Marines, and that was it. That was my only plan. You know, 16 years old, I applied. 17, I started my training. 18, I'd finished it.
Nice. Were you fairly adventurous when you went in? Were you like fairly outdoorsy, or did you like have a completely different background? Because the one thing I find about the Corps is like everyone's different.
I was overweight, chubby, spent most of my time playing computer games, rubbish at football, didn't like rugby, didn't do any of that stuff when I was a kid. I did a lot of martial arts when I was younger. I started training physically when I was about 12 or 13 because I was chubby as a kid and I wanted to change that. So no, wasn't really outdoorsy, didn't like camping as such, and, you know, rock climbing, orienteering, those kind of things. Very much a city boy as opposed to a country boy. So is it like a process of change that you're looking to go through? Like when I find that I look at myself especially, it was like I wanted to change something about myself. Was it you're looking to kind of to go down that route, or was there anything else there? I just had this hunger from a young age to want to be the very best that I could be. And that was another thing that appealed to me about the Royal Marines. You know, they're not shy in letting you know that it's the longest and hardest regular forces training in the world. You know, apart from special forces selection, it's the hardest. So that was a massive thing for me as well. I thought, you know, if I'm going to join the military and I'm going to have this 22 plus year career, I want to be able to stick my chest out wherever I go. You know, and people know that I've been through the longest, hardest training in the world to get to where I am. You know, and that's what it's about for me, was testing myself to see if I had what it took at that age to be able to make the grade and pass it. Nice. And then obviously how was training for you? Oh, it was shit. I hated it. Like the first day, you know, I live in Plymouth. We train, our training base is in Exmouth. So it's 45 minutes in a car. But to me at 16 or 17 then, I might as well be on the other side of the world. And I was homesick, and, you know, I just kept thinking to myself, I live down the road. Let's just get back on the train and go home to my nice warm bed, you know, and figure some other kind of plan out. But I just decided to take it one day at a time. You know, there's 62 people in my troop when we started, 62 strangers. You know, I was the second youngest there. All these people seemed to have masses of life experience. They seemed to know what they were doing. Every time we were told to do something, I looked around and they were getting on with it like they'd done it a million times before. And I'm stood there thinking, what are we supposed to be doing? I don't get it. And they're all getting on with it. So I had to ask everyone for help. And I just wanted to leave every day and go home. But like I said, I just decided to break it down into chunks and just do a chunk at a time until eventually, you know, there were no chunks left. Nice. And I'm sure that's a tactic that's helped you in the long run as well. I find that, like, with the work that I do with athletes and stuff, and you'll notice even in things like 30 mile, if you think about it as 30 miles, it's brutal, right. But 1 mile at a time, that's all you do. 1 mile, 30 times. Done. And that's you're exactly right. I do that in all areas of my life. And I didn't even realize that I did until more recent years when I've started looking into things like time management and goal setting and that kind of stuff, and realized when I read the books, I actually already do this, but I didn't know I did it. And I chunk a lot of stuff down. Nice, man. And then from training, what year was that actually when you were going through training? 2001. Okay, so you had 6 years into Afghanistan, or was that your first or a second tour? So I finished my training in October 2001. Yeah. Like 4 weeks after 9/11. Okay. So originally I was supposed to go to Afghanistan in 2002 on what's called Operation Chicana. So I was trained for that. It didn't happen. I think it ended up being more of a SF thing than a regular forces stuff. So it was massively scaled down. I went to Iraq in 2003 on Operation Telic 1 when I was 19 on that initial invasion. Spent 3.5 months out there. Came back, did the normal stuff, a couple of winter deployments to Norway, a little bit of, on a naval boat, sailing down to America on exercise, that kind of stuff. I actually left the Marines in 2006 for a year, retrained as a bodyguard out in South Africa. That didn't really work out for me. Really struggled to get work in that industry. I didn't really know anybody, and I was very, very young at the time. So I rejoined in early 2007, went to 40 Commando, and September that year, deployed out to Afghanistan.
Okay. So what were you thinking at that time? Was it were you thinking long-term career, or were you thinking just get in, do a few more years and kind of get on with it?
I'll be honest, my first 5 years, I fucked around a lot. Yeah. I got in a lot of trouble. I think I got charged 3 times for all sorts of different stuff. Because I was just a young lad. I was a young lad, cocky, with a green beret on his head, thinking I could take on the world and do what I pleased, and I had no one to answer to, and I got in a lot of shit. When I rejoined, I went back in completely refocused. I had a plan written out. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Afghanistan. I wanted to really, rather than sit back and wait for things to happen, really start pushing for some sort of promotion. I wanted to become a PTI, then become a corporal, get promoted, and then I was going to look at potentially going special forces. But obviously, we hit a bump in the road.
Yeah. So go into as much detail as you want to on the bump. So
September 2007, as a member of 40 Commando, we deployed to Afghanistan on Operation Herrick 7. Myself and a bunch of my friends were working out of a place called Forward Operating Base Robinson, which was in the southern region of the Helmand province. And 3.5 months into the tour, on Christmas Eve 2007, we went out on a routine foot patrol, and on the way back, probably about 200 meters from our camp, we were coming back in. We were given overwatch cover for another section that we'd been out with on the ground, and I stood on and detonated an improvised explosive device, which resulted in me losing both my legs above the knee and my right arm above the elbow. I can go into a lot of detail if you want.
Yeah, if you want to, yeah.
Okay, so I'll do the short version. So we left on this patrol. There were 2 sections, and the idea was that we would leave the rear entrance of our camp. One would go north, one would go south. We were to then patrol around the immediate perimeter of the camp. We were told not to push more than 300 meters out. Excuse me. Which was a bit strange, to that point we'd been going out for 6, 7, 8 hours, pushing 2-3 miles out. We had missions, we had objectives. The real idea behind this patrol really was to leave out the rear entrance, control the perimeter, and come back in the front entrance. Really, really simple, basic, nothing to it. So the time came and we left. I was second in command of the section. I went north. The other guys went south, and we went out and we did our patrol. About 5 hours later, both sections found themselves on the opposite side of the camp at the front entrance. The section that I was in just happened to be positioned on a really, really high piece of ground, like the highest piece of ground for 2 miles, maybe around. Slightly beneath us was our base, and then quite some way below that was the other section that we left with earlier in the day. So we were in a very advantageous position tactically because we could see so much around us. We could warn the other section of any incoming enemy. And obviously, in a firefight, it's a lot easier to go down a hill than it is to go up a hill. So we got tasked with giving that other section overwatch and protection so they could peel back into camp, get behind the perimeter wall. They could then cover us. We'd come down off the high feature, go back into camp, finish up, and then spend some time enjoying Christmas. So the section commander, he took half of the section where he needed them and started giving them fire positions. I took the other half, and I jumped into a shallow bowl in front of me, about 4 meters to my front. And my thinking was, on this high feature, there was no real form of cover. Normally you get behind a tree or a big rocky feature or something like that. And I thought, okay, we get in this bowl, we get on our bellies. You're only really going to see the top of our helmets. And if you're looking up anyway, you're probably not going to see that. So this is the best form of cover that we can have. So I jumped in. The guys all started taking positions. I picked my position, kind of halfway between each half of the section. And when they were happy, when they'd all got their positions and gave me the thumbs up, I started walking over towards the place I selected for myself. And as I went to get down onto my belly, my right knee hit the floor. And that was the minute that I detonated the improvised explosive device. Now, the next 35, 45 minutes was pretty intense. We're trained in that situation not to let your emotions get the best of you. So everyone's initial instinct is, my friend's been hurt, run in, help him, save his life. We're trained not to do that because you risk setting off other devices which could injure or kill you, or further injure me, or potentially kill me. So everyone is given a pre-assigned task in that situation, which they perform to perfection. One guy got straight on the radio and radio back for an evacuation. The guy closest to me started very slowly and methodically prodding the ground to check for any other devices and marking a clear route for when the medic got there. Someone else coordinated a defensive position in case it was a small arms attack. And everyone just clicked straight in to what it was we were trained to do. But for me, I was just lying there in this, what is now a crater, blood and claret and all sorts of stuff just falling out of the bottom half of my body, thinking, this is it, I'm done. There's so much stuff coming out of me. I didn't think I was going to last very long. And I thought that's how I was going to die. Now, weirdly, in the back of my mind, I never really thought that I would, because I just knew how good those guys were that I was working with. And I knew that if I was ever going to survive this, I couldn't be in better company. I knew these guys were highly professional and they would do everything that we've been trained to do, and they'll get me out of there as soon as they can. And that's exactly what they did. But I just lay there in this ditch, in the sun, bleeding out, just waiting to die. And I thought, actually, if I do die, as bizarre as this sounds, I'm cool with that, because it's honourable, it's doing something, noble and worthy, and you're fighting for people that can't fight for themselves. And, that would be a nice way for me to be remembered, I think. So I literally just closed my eyes, felt the sun beating down on my face and waited to black out and die. Obviously, that didn't happen. The medic got to me quite quickly. The pathway, like I said, was marked for him so he could run to me with no risk to himself. He got in. He applied tourniquets to my 3 limbs. He got me to tighten up the one on my arm to keep me responsive. He then put me onto a stretcher. Now, I wasn't in any pain to that point. My adrenaline kicked in. When he got there, he'd give me a bit of morphine to take the edge off. But when he dragged me onto the stretcher, I felt a really sharp shooting pain in my right leg. So, I told him to put me down, and I looked down to where the pain came from, and coming out of my right thigh was like a piece of rope, like a really thin piece of string covered in sand and blood and claret. And so I followed it in the ground, and it went into my boot. And so I picked this boot up, and my foot was still in there. And obviously the weight of that, where he had pulled me, this rope was like a tendon or a nerve or something, which had caused the pain. So the medic had to take my boot and foot and put it on my stomach and then evacuate me out of this crater. I have no idea how he got down from this high feature that we were on, because I had my eyes shut the entire time. But he got me down, he threw me into the back of a vehicle. The driver nailed the accelerator. We're flying along this really bumpy road. I'm getting thrown about in the back of this ATV. We start climbing up the incline to go to the front entrance of the camp. And then as we got near the gate, it got so steep and you had to drive so aggressively that the medic fell out the back. Now, I went to follow after him, but the guy driving swung around, put his arm out, and grabbed the femur bone coming out of my right leg.
Fuck,
to kind of hold me half in, half out this vehicle. He made the decision to leave the medic. The other section that we left with earlier was still at the bottom of the incline waiting to come into the camp, so he was safe. He was armed and protected. He was fine. And then the last thing I remember is getting to the helicopter landing site, this Chinook helicopter landing, this sandstorm being created from the propeller blades, the heat of the exhaust just beating down on me in the back of the vehicle, and then the kind of mechanical noise, the tailgate dropping, and then I blacked out, which is when I thought I had died. Technically, I did. After speaking to the medics, they told me I was declared dead, but that's the last thing I remember.
So when you're speaking about this, you seem so non-emotional. Like, it's just that the facts, or they're the facts. Is it that talking about it that makes it something that's easier to deal with? And like, what was it like talking about it to begin with?
Do you know what? It doesn't bother me. I think I'm very lucky in a way that I remember what happened. Yeah. A lot of guys that I went through rehab with were knocked unconscious and they don't have a clear recollection of what happened. And then later on in life, that's when they struggle with flashbacks and things like that. I think because I remember it, and, I talk about it regularly. I wrote a book about it. I tell this as a motivational speaker to corporates and schools and stuff. I think it's quite therapeutic. I don't know. I'm just lucky. I think I just don't. My mind doesn't seem to work the way other people's does. I genuinely, and I hope you can tell by the way I'm telling you this, matter of factly, it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
It's just another day in the office.
There must have been times though when after that it was there's some degree of why me, or like obviously you go through an emotional response to it. Was there any kind of emotion there, or was it just like initially deal with it and then deal with the emotion later?
There were 2 times within the first 6 weeks while I was in hospital where I struggled. The first was about 3 weeks in, when a doctor came in and said, basically you're going to be stuck in a wheelchair the rest of your life. Prosthetics are not an option for you. You've got too many limbs missing. It's too difficult. You just need to start getting yourself ready for life in a wheelchair. I was 24 years old then. Didn't want to hear it. So, spent a good 3 or 4 days just trying to process that, and very down, depressed and angry about my situation. And then I kind of got picked up from that. And then the first time I left the hospital, I went over to a flat that was provided for my family. It was like in a tower block. So we got in the communal entrance, got in the front door of the flat. But because I had a special wheelchair that you can use with one arm, it was extra wide on the left-hand side, which is the arm I've got remaining. So I couldn't get in any of the other standard rooms in the house. So I had to sit in the corridor and eat my dinner while everyone else was in the front room having fun. I had to pee in a milk bottle because I couldn't get into the toilet. And then eventually at the end of the night, I got to stay out of hospital that night, and we figured out a way to get me into the bedroom. And my fiance at the time wheeled me past a full-length mirror, which I hadn't done to that point. And I used to be 6'2". I used to weigh about 16 stone at my heaviest from, being fit and lifting weights. And at that point, I was 9 stone 6. And without my prosthetics, I haven't got them on now, I'm about 3 feet tall. And I just broke down and cried like for hours. I've gone from this Royal Marines Commando, big, hairy, smelly, macho, alpha male bloke running around, 24 years old, second war I've been in, living, in my opinion, as weird as it sounds, a really good life, doing what I want to do, to now being a cripple and in a wheelchair where people pushing me around. I can't do the most basic things, which is access rooms in a house. I'm getting pushed around. I look like shit. All my eyes were sucked in my head. My cheekbones are poking out. I just looked horrendous, and I just broke down and cried for about 6 hours.
What was the emotion there? Because I can imagine you got loads, like frustration, obviously sadness, pity. Like there must have been a whole range. But do you remember a particular emotion?
It was just a lot of doubt. I think I just didn't think I could do it, as in live the rest of my life that way. You know, I'm always been very independent, always wanted to do things on my own and figure stuff out. And because I had no knowledge of what my future really was, except for what that doctor had said, you know, I was going to be stuck in a wheelchair. I just thought, I can't do it. I'm 24. You know, if I live to 100, look how many years I've got left of my life. And I'm going to spend more of my life in a wheelchair being helped than I would have ever done out of it, you know, as an able-bodied person. And I thought, I don't want to do that. I don't want to live that way. I got too much pride, you know, and it was a struggle. You know, that was probably one of the worst nights I've ever had.
Yeah. So was it a gradual change then, or was it, because like to speak to you now, I'm sure you get kind of like labeled with this the whole time, but an inspiration, like you inspire people on a regular basis, whether it's through Instagram or speaking to people or just provide an example of what resilience and fortitude is. Where did that come from? I'm guessing it was innate, because no one gets through 32 weeks minimum of training, the hardest military training as well, without that. But some people lose it. So do you reckon that's innate in you, or was there particular people around you that support you through it, or what?
I mean, I had massive amounts of support from all different directions, but I'm lucky. I have this kind of thing inside me where something happens, you know, you have this brief period maybe where there's some negativity, and then you're like, all right, let's draw a line under that, it's done, move on. And I even did that with my injuries. I was just like, after that second bad time, I'm like, fuck it, what am I going to do about it? I'm going to sit here and cry and whinge about it, or just figure something else out and live a decent life, you know? And that was it. I had that night, you know, of crying and feeling shit. Next day, boom, let's go, let's do it. Let's go speak to some people, figure stuff out, you know, and see what we can do.
So what were the first challenges there?
Oh my God, the prosthetics. I went in there thinking to myself, this is not going to be that hard. I'm fit as hell. You know, it's not going to take much. And I put these prosthetics on, and the first thing was the pain. I still hadn't fully healed, and it was agony, like to the point where you stood there and tears came down my cheeks, not because I was crying, but just through the sheer pain. It just was, I couldn't stop it. And then when I started walking, I did one length of the parallel bars, which is about 5 meters. And I had to take them off, and I was done for the day. I went to my room and I was exhausted. And then I just thought, this is going to be really difficult. Because this is a different kind of fitness, completely different game.
Yeah, it's psychologically hard as well to keep that kind of focus, I can imagine, in that process.
It is, but I kind of, again, I flipped it and broke it down. I did that 5 meters, and I thought, I went back to my room, I had a nap, I woke up, and I thought, okay, this really isn't any different to training for the Royal Marines. It's going to be a long process. It's going to be really hard physically and mentally. But if you break it down, you know, and you put it into chunks, so you just take 1 week at a time, and then you make progress every day in that week. And then you look back on that week and you think, okay, I've done 12 extra steps this week. Brilliant. As my body gets stronger and I heal and I get more used to using prosthetics, you know, the next week it might be 20 steps. Then the week after that, 50. You know, and then a year down the line, 1,000. And I just had to break it down, and I had to tell myself it's going to be a slow process. This is not, you know, like learning to play tennis where you can be coached by people. And, you know, this is a very unique thing, and there aren't many people in the world that have gone through it. So it's going to be slow, but just take it, you know, day at a time, break it down, create a plan, and just be consistent.
Nice. You kind of touched on it there, but how much time were you spending looking at the future to what could be, and how much time were you focusing on the present moment, like what you can do now, and also like the past, what happens? Was there a split there?
The past was like 2%. You know, and again, that's just a thing that I do. I draw a line under it. It's done. See you later. We're not gonna dwell on that. The future, I spent a lot of time thinking about, and I was online researching prosthetics and amputees and triple amputees and sports and life with prosthetics and what other people were achieving, which then motivated me when I went into rehab and I was in the present. And you know, when things got difficult, I was like, well, hang on, that guy did it, so I should be able to do it too. you know, and that's what got me through some of the hard times. Because I firmly believe that, you know, if anyone can achieve one thing, you know, if we just copy their process mentally and physically, we can do the same. So I would see these guys that were doing things, I'm just trying to think of an example now, like swimming with 3 limbs missing. I thought, okay, well, that dude can swim with 3 limbs missing. So can I. I just need to figure out what he's done, what technique he uses, you know, and just copy him. And then I'll be able to do it myself to some sort of similar level. And that's what I just did with walking, with running, with all my sports, with life without a wheelchair, everything. Just modeled other people.
Because it's such an easy process for anyone who deals with hardship in any way to take the easy route, to crumble, or to stay where they are now and to kind of stay stagnant. And you just have this, I think it's a human drive, but you uncovered it of like, I'm going forwards and fuck everything else, because like, but the past is past. Like, you want to go forwards, and that's so fucking cool. And, a proper legacy to leave as well. Where did you like go in terms of sport? Like, where was the decision to go into sport from?
I did no sport for 9 years. A lot of my friends and colleagues that went through rehab when they were injured, they jumped straight into sport and they used it as a form of their rehab. And I had no interest at all.
Why was that?
Well, first of all, the sports that were on offer didn't interest me. You know, wheelchair racing and adaptive rowing. You know, I did martial arts where I was full contact kickboxing, boxing, and Muay Thai. You know, I didn't do sitting volleyball or any of that. So I thought, well, I don't want to do any of that stuff just because I'm disabled now. I don't have to be the stereotypical, you know, wannabe Paralympian. And my focus in early rehab was to live my life without a wheelchair. You know, so I focused all my effort on learning to walk. Then when I'd mastered that, you know, other things came along, other children, you know, getting married, starting a new job, all that kind of stuff. So sport wasn't a thing for me until, so not last year, the year before. You know, I sat down at Christmas, and every year I'll thrash out for like 2 days a list of goals of what I want to achieve in the following year. And I was sat down and I was writing all these goals down, and I took a minute out and I just closed my eyes and I just started visualizing some stuff. And I had this image of a jigsaw, and one of the pieces of the jigsaw was family, one was career, one was fitness, one was finances, one was like fun and adventure, and there was one missing, and I didn't know what it was. And so I just sat there for a little bit and had a think, and then I realized it was sport. You know, in these 9 years that I've been injured, I've never tried any of these sports. And the Invictus Games was, I think, 2 years old at that point. And I'd seen a lot of my mates going out there and competing and winning medals and just doing phenomenal things. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to give sport a try this year. And I'm not going to dilly-dally about and, you know, excuse the pun, but dip my toe in the water and try it at some sort of low club level. I'm just going to throw my hat in the ring and see if I can make it to Invictus Games and see what I can do. And I went in with a very naive attitude. And, you know, I was like, well, I'm a Royal Marine. All I've got to do is go in there and just hold my breath, smash the hell out of it, and I'll beat everyone. And I thought these sports were very, what's the word? Maybe condescending. I thought it was like a pity thing where people went, "Oh, well done, you know, you did this, you're great," you know, and they were just telling you how great you were because it's supposed to be hard. And I went in with that attitude until the first time I sat on a rowing machine and did an adaptive row, and really had to stop myself throwing up at the end of it in front of everyone and embarrassing myself. And then I got off that rower and, you know, I nearly passed out. I was, you know, getting tunnel vision. I was seriously dehydrated. I was exhausted. And I thought, what the hell is this? This is not supposed to be this difficult. And then all the sports I did, the guys I was training with were just ridiculous, like so good at all these sports and so fit. And I was like, I'm really going to have to work my ass off here if I want to have any shot of doing well here. You know, and it completely changed my mind about adaptive sports massively.
Nice. And it was it like getting back into that kind of physical shape?
honestly, it was rough. It was really, really rough. Rowing's so difficult, like cardio-wise. I never thought I would feel that way again after being injured. Like the way I feel after an intense rowing session is like I used to feel after running a 10-miler, when your heart and lungs are bursting, and you know the feeling I'm on about. And I just thought, well, I'm never going to feel that way like this until I discovered rowing, swimming, and those kind of things. But again, it was a process. And it was really exciting in the way that I was discovering how to use like my little stubby arm, which I thought, well, that's useless. What's that going to do? And now I figured out ways where I can utilize it to my advantage, in different sports. Like as we said earlier, I've been training jiu-jitsu this morning. I can use this little stubby here to choke people out. And I did this morning. I used it as a way to choke somebody. And I figured out things about my body which I didn't know, because before when you got arms and legs, you use all the big muscles, the biceps, the triceps, the quads, the hamstrings, and now I'm having to use things like my lower abs and my core and my glutes and all those kind of things to work. They're my bigger muscles now that I have to use. So it was a massive journey of self-discovery as well. Nice.
Firstly, talk me through the choke that you can go do with your stump.
Oh, there's loads of them.
Yeah.
It's basically from a mount position, wrapping my arm around my opponent's head, putting my right ear on their left, and then squeezing with my left, but putting my stump on that side of their neck and effectively coming in from both angles and just using that there to choke on the side of their neck, and squeeze the air out of them.
Nice. Yeah. I like that. That's awesome. How did you get into jiu-jitsu?
So I've got a very good friend. He's a very good friend. I didn't know him before. His name's Colour Sergeant Sam Sheriff. He's a serving Royal Marines PTI down here in Plymouth. And he's in fact recently last week been promoted to a brown belt. But he is so passionate about jiu-jitsu, and a couple of years ago he started something called the Reorg Foundation. And he was using jiu-jitsu as a way of rehabilitating either serving or retired, wounded, injured, or sick servicemen in the Royal Marines. Because he knew the massive benefits of it mentally, first of all, but then he knew how inclusive it was physically. So someone like myself missing 3 limbs, I thought, well, what am I going to be able to do in this sport? People, again, are just going to pity me and, pat me on the head and tell me you did good. But really, like I've just said, there are so many things that I can do, and it's so inclusive, and it just makes you feel, like a man again, because you're not being pitied, you're not being given an easy ride. I mean, he whipped my ass this morning. He kicked it up a gear this morning and just tore me to pieces. There was no pity on me there, and I had to fight my way out of everything. But Reorg Jiu-Jitsu is phenomenal. I've got as many people, in my wounded, injured, and sick circle as I can to get involved in it. It's now branched off into functional fitness and to boxing. Exactly the same idea, using those sports to rehabilitate people mentally and physically after suffering injury or wounding or sickness. It's just phenomenal what he's done with that. As I don't say this lightly. It hasn't just changed lives. I think it's saved a lot as well.
I can imagine. It's the purpose and the fact, I think, like from my point of view, I get growth from it. So like I assume that transpires to everyone. Just the fact that you grow and you can see progression. I think that's probably huge.
Yeah, and I think it carries on when you get off the mat. I think the things you learn in jiu-jitsu carry on into your normal everyday life. And I've noticed it a lot with my prosthetics. Like I was used to be very clumsy and clunky. I'd get up off a sofa and it'd all be just like brute force and ignorance and walk around. And now I kind of feel more finessed. Do you know what I mean? It's so hard to explain, but just the way I use my body now outside of jiu-jitsu is because of jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And it's helped massively.
Yeah, I'm going to go down the rabbit hole, but you become more elegant with your movement. Like you stop wasting energy, and like I'm shit. Like I've been training 9 months, maybe close to 12 months. But like, God, like it improves everything in the way you do it, and the thought process as well. I was speaking to my professor yesterday, and just like, what one thing can I do to improve quicker? And it's like patience. So Fuck you. just be more patient, okay?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head when you said about the way you use your energy better. Because for me, it takes between 300 and 500% more energy to do anything than an able-bodied person. And that's exactly what I meant when I say, like, getting up off a chair. Normally, it'd be like, ugh, just this big, heavy, gruntish movement. But now it's not. It's more finessed, more energy efficient. And, it means that at the end of the day, I'm not as wiped out as I would have been before. It's just all around it. I just think it helps improve your life.
Nice. So what's the, firstly, what are you doing now in terms of work and how are you helping others? I think that's a really important point to touch on.
So I have worked since 2010 for the Royal Marines Association. So I work for the association and the charity now in a full-time salary position. Fundraising, raising awareness, recruiting, membership, working with serving and retired Royal Marines, doing all sorts of stuff with the wounded, injured and sick. So I've been doing that for the last 8 years. I work as a speaker outside of that. So I travel around the world, basically telling my story in a lot of detail to corporates mainly, sometimes to schools and things. I've recently started a very small online business, a little brand I've got through social media called No Limits. It's kind of branched out into merchandise now with clothing and wristbands, and we're going to be going into the kind of sports stuff now, water bottles and that kind of stuff. And it's not, in my opinion, my whole mission behind it is not to be just another brand, but it's to be a movement. I want people to see it and it to empower them. So if you've got someone who's maybe been thinking about going to the gym for ages and for whatever reason they've been held back, hopefully they've seen a few of the things that I do online. They maybe bought a wristband and they can see the No Limits branding and they're like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going now. If that guy with 3 limbs missing is doing this, then I've got no reason not to. And I want to create an empowering movement with that business and try and spread that across the world, So I'm doing that too. And then loads of other stuff. I've just finished doing a documentary. I'm writing my second book now. I'm training now for the Invictus Games this year. So all that's going on. So pretty non-stop.
Busy man.
Yes. Yeah.
This is going to sound like it could be a weird question. But have you ever been thankful for the injuries that you've had?
Yeah, I think I have. Gratitude is a big part of my life now. It never used to be. So being grateful for everything that happens, good, bad, whatever. And certainly now, a decade on, I look at things that way. Like I told you earlier what my plan was when I rejoined the military, what my career plan was. That didn't go the way I wanted it to, but I don't think I would have the life I have now had these injuries not happened. So I've got 3 beautiful, healthy children. 2 of them came along after my injuries. I've just told you all the things I do in my life. I don't think I definitely wouldn't be writing books now if I was still in the military. No matter how many crayons you give me, I probably wouldn't have been able to write a book back then. But now I've got something, what people find interesting to say. I've had the opportunity to go and do that. Just so much cool stuff has happened in my life since I was injured, and it's not just about me, but the opportunities I can give to my family as well.
No, yeah, it's beautiful. Are there any, like we spoke about chunking, are there any mental tactics that you've learned through your journey that you find that you pass on to people?
I'm a big believer in and a big advocate for self and personal development, and I try to tell people all the time, like, when you want to, literally before we did this, I put up an Instagram post and I was talking about no matter what your situation is, no matter how hard it could be to find it, always look for the good in that situation. So I've just completely told you exactly what the good in my situation was, what I can provide for myself, what I can provide for my family, the opportunities and everything that we have. But I also tell people, that want to change their life, that you don't have to do it all in one big hit. You know what I mean? Like all the things I've done over the last 10 years, you don't cram it into a year. You just make small, consistent changes on a daily basis. So daily habits is a big thing for me. You know, I try and tell people to change their daily habits a little bit at a time and chip away at stuff. And, you know, 12 months down the line, you're in a completely different space. You know, I get up every day at 5:15. You know, I either train or I meditate. I planned my days the night before, so I know what I'm doing that day. And despite how busy I am and how much longer things take me than they used to, I still find I have spare time most of the day, because I've got into that routine, and I've got those habits of planning and being consistent with what I do, sorting myself out physically or mentally every morning, starting the day off right, you know, and goal setting. You know, that's a big thing.
What's your goal setting process look like?
Literally, I sit down at Christmas, I pick a day, usually like the 28th or something between Christmas and New Year, and I get some paper and I'll write down all the areas of my life that I want to improve in that following year. So it could be my fitness, it could be my finances, it could be my career, whatever it is. I'll put the headings down, and then for each heading underneath it, I just write down, I just go mad for like 3 or 4 minutes writing everything. So, you know, fitness, do 1,000 pull-ups, run 200 miles. That's not realistic, but you know what I'm saying? You just scribble down all the stuff you want to do in those areas. Then I sit down and, you know, go over it, contemplate it, dwell on it. And I'm like, okay, realistically, what do I want to do? What's the top 3 or 4 I want to do? And then, you know, work out that way, discard some things because we've got to be realistic. And then I put it into a plan of what I want to achieve it. And generally I'll jump forward 12 months and then work it back. So I know that at what point I need to have achieved certain things to be on track. And then it's just a case of 1st of January, we execute.
Perfect. Like, it's no matter who I speak to, like I try and get as many successful people, however you define success, successful people on the show as I can. You're obviously in that category. But it all follows the same principles. Like the fact that you not only write goals like so many people do, but then I read somewhere the other day that 92% of people who set goals fail is because they don't take the next step that you took, which is like putting it into practice. Like, here's a plan. This is the steps to get there. Right. And also discarding the shit ones that don't mean anything to you.
Yeah. Or getting depressed if they don't achieve them all. Yeah. You're not going to achieve them all. You know what I mean? Maybe not necessarily. And here's a perfect example. Like 3 years ago, my goal was that I wanted to host an event called An Evening with Mark Ormrod, where I'll sit in a room with a bunch of people, you know, for 2 or 3 hours, have a laugh, tell my story, you know, and just really have a good time with a bunch of people, you know. And I didn't do it until this year. I'm actually doing it Saturday in Portsmouth, you know. So I failed for 3 years on achieving that goal. And then this year it happened. So I didn't get down about it or depressed, you know. Or if I set a goal of, again, I'm going to just put a random stupid thing out there, but earn 100 grand in a week, right? If I don't do that, but I earn £92,000 in a week, I'm not going to cry about it. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty decent anyway, you know. But some people will get obsessed with not being exactly on target or failing to achieve something. But you just got to, you know, be flexible, figure another way to achieve it, and keep moving forward with it.
Yeah, nice. There's a mantra that I use as much as many times I can with the athletes, and it came from one of my mentors, or a pair of mentors, and it's progress over perfection. So many people think they have to achieve the perfect outcome. It's like earn that 100 grand, or fill that room with people, or whatever it is, or get to the CrossFit Games, like whatever it is. But if you get 92% of the way there, which most people do, it's still better than where you were originally. And you touched on something else. Meditation as well. Like, sorry, let me start again. How long have you been meditating for?
Probably 9 months, maybe.
And is it an app that you're using?
Yeah, Headspace.
Yes, it's the one.
Yeah. I've been using that one because I didn't really know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd better get some sort of guidance. So I did a bit of research, downloaded the app, picked out a few of the topics that I wanted to concentrate on, and just, again, consistency, did 10 minutes every morning, you know, until I could calm my mind and focus in on how I needed to, and, you know, get it right. I mean, I still don't think I'm that good at it, but I find it very beneficial, and I'll get better and better over time.
I think meditation's maybe the hardest thing I do. I've been doing it for like 4 years, and it's just every day I turn up and like, it's same as jiu-jitsu. It's like, oh shit, this still in the best way possible. It's like, I lost concentration 1,000 times within 10 minutes. But it's progress over perfection again.
Yes, definitely, for sure.
So man, tell us where we can find out a bit more about you, like Instagram handles, websites, and that kind of stuff.
I'm all over all of that. So all of my handles are just at Mark Ormrod. So that's on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. I've just started my own podcast at the minute.
Nice.
And as we just said, progress over perfection. It's not perfect. They're only about 10 minutes per episode. I'm keeping them short to start with. The whole idea of it was I didn't want to do it how we're doing now. The idea was that if I'm driving around the country and something pops in my head and I want to say it, I just pull my car over, record it into my phone, say it, and then upload it. So at the minute, I just upload them to YouTube and then share them through social media. And I've got a friend of mine at the minute figuring out how to get onto iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and all that kind of stuff. And I'll make it a bit more professional. But like you said, progress over perfection. I had to start somewhere, and I'll get better over time.
Nice. If you need a hand with getting it out onto iTunes and all that kind of stuff, just hit me up. I'm more than happy to help. Once you got it, it's easy and takes care of itself. Okay. Cool. And I'm going to actually try and release this today. It might be tomorrow, but I'll edit it, like put it straight out. So if there's anyone listening in the Portsmouth area, remind everyone of the evening with Mark Ormrod.
So it's this Saturday, 4th of August. It's at the Royal British Legion Club, starting at 7:30. We have 150 spaces, 130 have gone. So there's like, they're probably going to be snapped up by the end of the week. You can turn up on a day and buy a ticket, but it's not guaranteed that you're going to get in now because we've hit capacity.
Nice, man. Cool. Well, yeah, that's awesome. If anyone's in the area or like wants to travel, like I'm sure they'll recognize after this that they want to go. So that's awesome.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Mindset RX podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please head over onto iTunes, leave a 5-star review, and all that kind of good stuff. If you're expecting just me, given my mindset, I was going to say wisdom, but learnings, I'll be back doing another solo episode very, very soon. And if you're interested in the Mindset RX coaching certification, you can email me, tom@mindsetrx.com, and I'll chuck you a bunch of information about the Mindset RX coaching certification. It's in short, a certification for people who want to work for Mindset RX or integrate mindset coaching into their own life. So, until next time, keep crushing it, and I'll speak to you soon.